Hey y'all, I'm Jen from Roaming with the Allens. This is the very first episode of Campfire Conversations, and this podcast is about real RV life. It's not the highlight reel, not the Pinterest perfect version, the honest, the funny, the messy, sometimes exhausting, sometimes incredible reality of living life on wheels. This podcast is for permanent RVers, full-time travelers, seasonal movers, weekend warriors, and anybody who's RV curious or wondering if this life could ever make sense for them. I wanted to start this podcast at the beginning because our life didn't start as a dream, it started as survival. So today I want to talk about why we chose RV life and what surprised me the most once it stopped being an idea and became real. Before RV life, our life kind of looked normal from the outside. We were renting a house we could no longer afford. It was on 79 acres of land and it was beautiful, but the house itself was just not great. And no matter how much we asked, repairs were not happening. It was making money tight for all of us. Everything felt heavy. We were stressed out. We weren't planning adventures. We were just trying to stay afloat. I called my stepmom and my dad, knowing that they had a camper that they had once lived in full time. Didn't know what the situation was it, and wanted to see if they would possibly let us buy it. And at first they had to say no, but the person that was buying it fell through. So we became the proud new owners of an RV if we could figure out how to get to Wyoming and get it. So sitting underneath a general store in the town that has a mirror for a dog. Yes, that's a real place. If you're wondering, it's Rabbit Hash, Kentucky. You should drive through one day, especially if you're on a motorcycle. But anyway, that was the moment everything changed, because suddenly RV life wasn't a concept anymore. It wasn't something I could think about casually and then move on from. It was real enough we had to decide if we were actually brave enough to do it. We were broke and we really had no idea what we were doing. We'd never owned an RV before. We'd stayed in one once for one night. It was an Airbnb and it didn't even have the black tank set up in it. We couldn't even take a shower in it. But Kelly sold his Drift BMW. We sold and gave away so much of our life. We decided to move away from that land that we loved. And on September 12th, 2024, we flew to Wyoming to meet the hauler and get Roaming Reflection brought back to Ohio. Our hauler did not speak a lick of English. I was terrified because he had clearly jackknifed a fifth wheel into the back of his truck before he attached our bumper pull to it, because it was duct taped so no wind or rain would get in, I guess. But it made it to Ohio, a little bit crooked in the driveway, but it made it. And that, my friends, was the beginning of Roaming with the Allens. So I thought RV life was going to be freeing right away. We didn't have a truck that was big enough of our own to pull the camper, and it was winter time, so we had to find a permanent spot that kept water on, and that was hard to do in Ohio, but we did find one. It was a nice campground. The people weren't very nice, we learned, but we had a dog incident and we had to leave the campground 5 days into being there, and we ended up in a hotel for 3 days with the dogs, nowhere to park our camper. We did eventually find a trailer park that I did not feel safe or comfortable in to park the camper, and we were there until the week before Thanksgiving. So all of October and the first 2 weeks of November and part of the third week. And then we went to Houston Woods State Park, and it froze for the first time, and so did our Stinky Slinky, and it shattered. So we learned that the hard way. Winter lessons came very quickly. I learned how to identify what was frozen. Usually it's your low point drain. That's the first thing to freeze. Don't ever forget that. So moving into the camper didn't feel freeing right away like I thought it would. It wasn't all sunsets, campfires, flexibility, and peace. It was a lot of planning, borrowing trucks, a transmission going out, snow, just everything that you can imagine. And I was starting menopause at the time and didn't know it. So it was like I was going through an exorcism every single day. It was a very dramatic winter. But we jumped parks all winter. We went from Houston Woods to Rocky Fork. No, that's not what we did at all. We went to Cowan Lake from Houston Woods, and then we went to Rocky Fork, and then we went to Paint Creek, and then Caesars Creek, which was one of my favorite sites, and how we got the camp post position we had last year. After Caesars Creek, we did 2 more weeks at Houston Woods, which was a year ago this week. And then after that, we started our venture into Indiana State Parks, which are a lot more flexible with their staying times. You can stay 14 days. You only have to be gone 2 nights and you can come back. So staying at Mounds and Memorial that are like 8 miles down the road from each other was easier. We still had to borrow a truck to do it, but it was a whole lot less work in order to do it. So needless to say, there are days where weather, the small space, the constant logistics, the breakdowns, the uncertainty, and the decision making feel overwhelming. There are moments where I literally questioned everything, moments where I wondered if we had made a huge mistake. Probably less moments and more hours where we made a huge mistake, or I thought we had. And I cried about it a lot. But there were good parts, and the good parts keep getting louder and louder. We're a year and a half into this now. Quiet moments hit differently when you're in a campground. The connection to nature and the people around you feels different. It feels deeper. There are moments that can stop you completely. Sunrises you don't expect. You walk out the camper door and your breath's taken away because the sky is different shades of pinks and purples and oranges and just absolutely beautiful. The same with sunsets. Campgrounds feel like home, even if you're only there for 2 weeks. It's sad to leave them. That's a lot of what people say on Facebook when I ask what the hardest part about camping is. I just did that last week, and I would have to say probably 60% of my comments through about every single group was the hardest part was leaving. And that has to be because it starts to feel like home. You get comfortable there. It's a random conversation that turns into a connection you didn't know you needed with a stranger, in the site next to you. We got to host last year at Caesars Creek for 6 months. And while we're not going back, I'm so glad we got the experience. I made friends I never would have made that didn't even follow Roaming with the Allens. We have friends that did follow Roaming with the Allens, that came to the campground and stayed there just to meet us, which was awesome. I'll never forget the first person that ever asked if we were roaming with the Allens was Amy. And she drove by while I was filling up water and yelled, "Hey, are you roaming with the Allens?" And I had to stop and think and be like, yeah, that's me. There was a moment standing outside of our camper when I realized this life wasn't about escape. It's about intention. So whether you're traveling full time, you live permanently in one spot, are moving seasonally, or you're a weekend royer, RV life asks you to be present. There is no autopilot. There is no hiding from your life. We chose this life knowing it wouldn't be perfect. We chose it scared. We chose it without a safety net. But we chose it because we wanted something real. Something that felt like ours. Something that didn't trap us. Something where we felt free. I know this episode's a little short, but Campfire Connections is about people behind RV life. It's the stories, the doubts, the wins, the moments that nobody posts about. If you're living the life, questioning it, dreaming about it, or just curious, this is for you. If this episode resonated with you, subscribe, leave a comment, or share it with someone who's been wondering if there's a different way to live. I'm glad you're here. I appreciate you taking the time to listen to my first episode. If you have a story, a question, or even something you've been afraid to say out loud about RV life, I'd love to hear it. You can email me at roamingwiththeallens@gmail.com or message me on Facebook at Roaming with the Allens. This podcast is about real stories that include yours. See you guys next week.